Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Naruto woke up slowly, feeling that something was most definitely wrong. It wasn't that he could feel it, but he just sensed it. He checked to make sure that he was indeed still in his bed, then slowly he opened his eyes a fraction of an inch. It took him a moment to realize that the ceiling overhead was a different color than the one at his apartment. That was when he heard the giggling whispers that girls so often used. Alarm bells started going off in his mind and he lifting his head to see what his surroundings were. It was a room in one of the orphanages, but more importantly, it was a room filled with giggling, staring girls. Naruto's first instinct was to bolt out of the bed when he realized that he was under his blanket, which didn't matter too much since the blanket itself was actually nailed to the frame and wasn't going anywhere. Naruto managed articulately and then looked at one of the girls, who was giggling big time. Do you think I could borrow your sheet? Or a pillow? No, the girl said amid more laughter. Blushing now, Naruto grew self-conscious, twisting onto his side and trying to think of a way out of this. Well, he still had his pillow, so at least that was something. That crisis solved, he turned his mind toward who had done this to him. He had a suspicion that it was Anko, but he wasn't sure. Then, remembering he had a room full of giggling witnesses, he smiled slightly. Oi, did any of you see who did this? There was chorus of no's and then one girl nodded and shyly climbed off her bed at the far end of the room and approached him. Seeing her, Naruto sat up as best he could, embarrassed at the way some of the girls blushed at his I saw who did it, the girl said once she had gotten to the end of his bed. She had black hair and she wore fishnetting. At that the girl flushed slightly. Anko, Naruto grumbled and then noticed she was holding a familiar-looking box. Oi, what's that? She asked me to give this to you when you woke up, said, something about karma and forced ingestion. Taking the box, Naruto examined it and then gulped, paling. It was the same box of laxatives he had used on Anko last night. Mouth going dry, he shifted uneasily on his bed, praying that she was just trying to psych him out, but he knew better. Modesty forgotten, Naruto tore his way out of the bed and, amid twittering laughter, whistles and blushes raced out of the room. Halfway down the stairs, he into the woman that was in charge of the orphanage and then continued on his way, tears in his eyes as he raced out into the street and tried to make it home before he lost all control. The entire way he cursed the named Mitarashi Anko. Inoki chuckled to himself as he scanned the joke section of Shinobi Digest, listening to the even more humorous shouting match between his wife and his sweet, though temperamental, daughter. Sometimes he seriously wondered why he and his wife had been blessed with such a daughter. Setting the digest aside for a moment, he poured himself yet another cup of coffee and then turned back to his reading just as his daughter entered the kitchen. He listened as she moved about, muttering under her breath while trying to find breakfast and fasten the sword Hayat had presented her. Inoki wisely kept his amusement hidden until his daughter, with a muttered curse, finally managed to hook the belt of the sword into the proper position around her waist. So, this is the big day, huh? Inoki finally said, looking up at her. My little girl's becoming a chunin. Yeah, Ino snorted, looking around impatiently at the table and counter before grabbing a cup from the sink and filling it with orange juice. So, you got everything. Know where you're supposed to go? Yes, Ino said, with such longer suffering that Inoki knew she was nervous. He watched as she started to check her watch, then froze when she nearly spilled her drink. You've got plenty of time, Inoki said, chuckling as he turned back to the digest he had been reading. So, I guess Shino and Anzai, wasn't it, are waiting for you. Anzai, Ino repeated blankly before sighing in exasperation. Like he's not an issue now. Inoki managed, turning to stare at his daughter. Not an issue. He is your teammate, right? Like, not anymore. Get with the times, Naruto. Naruto, have I met him? No, Ino said, then looked at her father guardedly. Why? No reason, Inoki lied expertly, hackles rising at the merest hint of an unknown boy around his precious daughter. So, what's he like? I dunno, Ino said with a shrug, before checking her weapons pouch as if she was afraid she had forgotten something. Guy like, sorta annoying, blonde hair, electric blue eyes, whisker marks. You know, I'm not so sure I like the idea of you taking the exam with some boy I've never met. Daddy, he's just a teammate. Ino shot back, a slightly worried look on her face. Aha, Inoki said, while nodding. This, Naruto, is a boy your age. He's got guy parts. This is a terrible idea. Dad, Ino shouted in exasperation and then rounded on her mom who chose that moment to enter the kitchen. Mom, tell him that me taking the exam with Naruto is no big deal. Honey, it's no big deal. Wait, who's Naruto? Our daughter's teammate, Inoki said, looking up at his wife. He's got blonde hair and electric blue eyes. Oh, the Yamanaka matriarch said, arching an eyebrow as Ino threw her hands up in frustration. Does he have a last name? I don't believe this, Ino shouted, stomping her foot angrily. He's my teammate, okay. I went to the academy with him. It'll be fine, he's okay, ya know. This isn't the drama you're making it out to be. I thought you said he was annoying, Inoki said, suddenly finding the whole situation funny. She called him annoying. His wife added, unable to hide her grin. This is serious. I know, Inoki started to agree, only to stop and watch his daughter storm out the back door in a huff. Suddenly, he started laughing. Be careful, we love you. Even if you are annoying, his wife added while laughing. Shut up, Ino called back as the door shut behind her. Uzumaki Naruto was in a bad mood. This was not a good thing, much the same way as when Anko was in a good mood. It was a cosmic law, like the one that said the sun rose in the east and set in the west. The natural order of the world seemed unbalanced when such an event occurred. Shinobi and civilians also had a tendency to scatter when such an event occurred. Ino and Shino had both been surprised at the malevolence that radiated from the orange-clad boy, but Naruto had paid them very little heed. He was too busy mulling over Anko's prank and how best to get her back for such an atrocity. The leading contenders were itching powder in her underwear which he thought she might not actually wear and putting a hair removal chemical into her shampoo or conditioner. That'd show her, Naruto said without thinking, grinning almost viciously at the image of a bald Anko. Then suddenly he realized that it would probably be best to do both at the same time. Hell yeah. Geez, you're still loud. Turning at the familiar sounding voice, Naruto found himself facing Kiba, who was flanked by a bored Sasuke and an irritated Sakura. Oi, Kiba. Then before he could continue his greeting he was promptly shoved aside as Ino moved to hug Sasuke. Stumbling, he shot the girl a glare, then felt a very strong urge to plunge a kunai into Sasuke. Shaking that off, he turned his attention to Sakura, only to be unsurprisingly ignored as the two girls got into a shouting match over Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke. Seething, Naruto turned and started walking, his bad mood worsening. Why was it always that pathetic bastard? What was so damn special about that prick? So what if he was tall, a genius and had a famous clan? He was nothing. Naruto could take him with one hand tied behind his back while eating ramen. Needless to say, Sasuke pissed the blonde off something fierce. Hey Naruto, Kiba said loudly from back near Shino. Sakura said that she saw you and Ino shopping together a while back. Huh, Naruto said, turning to glare at the boy. Oh, yeah, she dragged me clothes shopping. What the hell are you saying? Ino shouted, while choking him from behind. Naturally, he was clutching at her arm, kicking his legs and trying to free himself. Ooh, so it was you. See, Sasuke-kun, I told you they were dating. Sakura said sweetly. Naruto choked even louder as Ino's arm squeezed his en even tighter. It was not a date. Ino shouted loudly, his jacket was a mess and I was tired of seeing orange. Aha, Sakura said, grinning. You don't have to lie, we understand. Plus, we all know what they say about clothes shopping, so it's pointless. What Ino stop Jerof may they say. Naruto managed, gasping out the last few words as Ino finally released her hold and turned away in a huff. Okay, he was seriously going to have to find out why in the hell she could treat him like that. Sakura, grinning in a rather annoying fashion, nodded seriously, holding a finger up. Clothes shopping, K-friends, shoe shopping, more than K-friends, jewelry shopping. Run, Kiba shouted, supplying his own unique perspective on Sakura's scale of intimacy. Sakura shot him a glare, then lifted her palms up and closed her eyes as she continued. Basically, if you're shopping for clothes together, you're boyfriend and girlfriend. What? Naruto shouted, eyes wide. Stop lying, you big forehead. Ino shouted as well. I'm not lying, Ino pig. Sakura shouted back, looking affronted. Ask anybody. As both girls squared off, while Kiba and Akamaru retreated and Shino, along with Sasuke, calmly walked away, Naruto ran his hands through his hair, trying to wrap his mind around the concept that Sakura had just told him. She had to be lying, right, but Sakura never well, okay, she lied sometimes. Still, she had to be wrong. Only, she was never wrong. So, was she telling the truth? Why would she lie about something like that? To annoy Ino, of course. Realization dawning on him, along with the anxiety that had been building relaxing, he turned to explain this to Ino when he found them in mid-fight. Girls, the blonde muttered in frustration before turning to continue walking, growing even more irritated when he realized that Sasuke was walking beside him. That was okay, though, soon enough they'd be in the exams, and Naruto was sure he'd get the chance to kick the prick's A. He smiled cruelly, imagining some very vicious things he would do to the pretty boy. Is there any reason you're grinning like a maniac? Sasuke suddenly asked, his tone bored. Yeah, Naruto said brightly. I was just thinking about how much I'm looking forward to kicking your A. Hey, sure, Sasuke said, not glancing away from the building. A loser like you couldn't even scratch my forehead protector. Oi, I hit your chin. Naruto shouted, glaring at the Uchiha. Lucky shot, Sasuke returned, glaring back. Lucky shot, Naruto said angrily, and then grabbing the boy's arm jerked him around so that they were face to face. You want to fight right now, you prick. Wanna see how much of a lucky shot it was? If you think you can do it, Sasuke said challengingly. Sasuke-kun, Naruto. Ino suddenly said in trepidation. I don't think you should. Be quiet, Yamanaka, Sasuke snapped without looking away from Naruto. This is between real ninja, not wannabes. Oi, she is a ninja, and don't you tell her to be quiet. Naruto snapped, shoving the genius roughly. What are you going to do about it? Sasuke snapped back, shoving Naruto. This, Naruto shouted, and, within the space of a heartbeat, he had a kunai in hand, matched by Sasuke. Stop! Two girls shouted at the same time as a swarm of bugs found their way to the two arguing boys. Naruto froze, eyes never leaving the other boy's face, his kunai an inch from Sasuke's cheek. Sasuke's own kunai was an inch from Naruto's stomach. It was one of those tense moments where all of Naruto's training from Anko demanded to strike, craved it. This conflict is pointless, Shino said in that bland tone he always seemed to use. However, if you wish to continue, then might I suggest you do it in the exam? Fair, Sasuke said, slipping his weapon back into his holster. Whatever, Naruto muttered, roughly pocketing his kunai while giving Sasuke a dark glare. Oi, did a swarm of bugs just come out of your coat? Kiba suddenly shouted, breaking the serious moment between the two groups. Sasuke, however, turned and stormed away from the two teams, prompting Sakura and Kiba to follow. Naruto remained where he was for several minutes, studying the group, and then snorted, following after them, not saying another word. Mentally, however, he had decided to skin Sasuke the first chance he got. Flip, 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 flip. Anko caught her kunai on the downward spin, balancing it precariously on the tip of her finger. A slight frown marred her features. She was disappointed that she could still only manage 4 flips before having to catch the weapon. Sighing, she pushed her finger yet again, launching the weapon into the air, where it flipped 4 times before she caught it yet again. Well, at least I don't have the idiot squad around anymore, the attractive muttered, remembering, with great annoyance, Team 7. She couldn't decide who was worse, the smug slut Kurenai or that smug prick of an Uchiha. Anger welling up inside her, Anko hurled her kunai away, coming close to the sea of one Hatake Kakashi, who didn't even look up from his book. Aha, I hope that wasn't because of anything I did. Maybe, Anko muttered, glaring at the masked man. So, why are you here? Kakashi nodded, looking up from his book as he joined her in leaning against the wall. To let you know that the Hokage would like to speak with you after the first test. What does that old man want now? Anko grumbled, crossing her arms and scowling. I'm not at liberty to say. Kakashi said, before pushing off the wall. Anyway, say hi to Naruto for me. I have to get back to work. Sure. Anko muttered, her eyes dropping to his butt. By the way, nice Kakashi. Whether it was due to her comment or his own mysterious nature, the silver-haired Jonin promptly disappeared with a puff of smoke and a choking sound. Sighing, she produced yet another kunani and, with a flick of her wrist, balanced it on her finger, then turned her attention to the far doorway. Seconds later, Team 9 entered, a scowling Naruto in the lead, heading directly for her. So, I guess Naruto made it, huh? Ha, Ino managed with a blink. Nothing, princess, Anko shot back as she slipped the kunai back into her weapons pouch. So, you guys ready for this test? Of course, Ino said, glancing at Shino who merely nodded. Naruto, however, remained silent and fixed her with a look of intense dislike. You nailed my sheets to the bed and put me in a room full of girls while I was sleeping. You can't blame me, you stupid brat. You started it with the laxatives, Anko responded dryly. You force-fed me laxatives while I was sleeping, Naruto said in a forced calm. You put plastic over the toilet, Anko answered, smirking. What are you going to do about it? Naruto paused, as if giving her question serious thought, and then suddenly lunged at her. Anko, of course, dodged the first punch, blocked the kick, caught him with a palm heel in the chin. Things went on in this vein, with Naruto actually managing to hit her shoulder once for another minute or so before Anko finally pinned him to the floor with her foot. Hard. Well, you seem fired up, Anko chirped, ignoring the shocked look on Ino's face and her heavy breathing. Instead, she focused on the feeling in her which she took to be pride, that stemmed from her student finally being able to hit her. Never mind that it was just a glancing blow and she had just barely been paying attention. Any lingering doubts she might have had about Naruto, or her own teaching methods, were erased. Anko-sensei. Ino managed, respectfully looking at the woman. We have to take the exam now. She is correct, Shino added, in what sounded like worry. Easing her foot off of the blonde, she grinned, watching as he angrily climbed to his feet and glared at her with more malice than she thought possible. When this exam is over, I'm going to kick your A. Aha, sure you will. Don't go making promises you can't keep, Anko taunted, amused at the way his left eye twitched. The blonde even opened his mouth to shout something at her, possibly even attack her, when Ino sa hand over his mouth and, with Shino's help, dragged him through the doors into the examination room. Anko just smiled. Good luck, Ototo. Then, laughing, she turned and walked away, wondering if 3 in the afternoon was too early to start drinking. Once beyond the doors, Naruto jerked himself out of his team's grasp and rounded on him, an angry bridge on his lips. He stopped, however, noting the surprised and overwhelmed looks, or in Shino's case the way his eyebrows arched they had. Blinking, he wondered what exactly had shocked those two into such a state. Turning, he blinked, only to have a wave of amazement wash over him. The room was large, filled with desks and, most importantly, countless ninja, most of whom were glaring at them with looks that could kill. Sadly for them, once the amazement had faded, Naruto felt very little else. Their glares were nothing compared to Anko's tea. Turning to say something along this line to Shino and Ino, he blinked, finding the girl still frozen and the boy standing almost ramrod straight. Geez, it's just a room full of genin. Naruto, like, this isn't the academy. These are serious ninja, Ino snapped, glaring at him. Good. 'Cause I'm serious too. Naruto said in response, crossing his arms. Ino is right, Naruto. We cannot take these ninja lightly, Shino said with a slight shift in posture. Especially if you truly wish to become Hokage. Naruto glared at the boy, then at Ino. Fine, they wanted serious. They wanted him to take these idiots seriously. Turning, he glared at the room. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Then, thrusting a finger at the massive ninja, he struck a heroic pose. I won't lose to any of you bastards. You got that? Shaking his head and snorting in frustration, he turned away from the scene. He had more important things to deal with at the moment. For example, Why he felt like he was being watched? No, sized up something he only noticed because Anko had done it before when they first started training. Feeling uneasy, Naruto felt his fingers twitch towards his weapon's holster when, suddenly, the feeling was gone. Looking around, rapidly he frowned and then turned to his team, only to discover Kiba talking enthusiastically with a stoic Sasuke while Ino and Sakura argued over some stupid hair clip. Geez, what is it with them? Naruto asked himself, almost jumping when Shino answered him. I am in the dark as well, the bug user said before his tone lowered slightly. You did feel someone watching us, correct? Oi. Yeah, but how'd you? My family can detect genjutsu, Shino explained in a low tone. There is a strong genjutsu in this room, and I do not think it wise to alert the others. Huh, why not? Naruto said, turning to look at his teammate curiously. Because it could be part of the exam. Oh. Naruto nodded, frowning slightly as he realized that was a good point. Still didn't feel right not to tell the others, or at least Ino. She was his teammate after all. Turning to mention this to Shino, he was brought up short by the sound of a loud, commanding voice. Quiet down, you pathetic bastards. Turning, Naruto watched as several people appeared in a puff of smoke, though his attention focused immediately on the largest one in the middle. The man was dressed in a long black coat, some kind of black head wrapping, and sported several scars on his face. Most importantly to Naruto, however, was the fact this man reminded him strongly of both Anko and Kakashi, someone to watch. He was proven correct a minute later when the man smiled in a way Naruto had come to associate with Anko before she started some sadistic tea, and started talking. I'm Morino Ibiki, the examiner for the Chunin exam's first test. You will obey my rules. You will not K each other without my permission. If you don't follow my rules, I will fail you immediately, and if you do K each other without my permission, I will K and out off or T you as I see fit. A few of the nearby ninja chuckled, others didn't. Naruto, after the jolt of memory at Ibiki's name, quickly noted which ones were among the few who knew a promise when they heard one. Before he could finish that, however, he felt someone studying him once more and turned, almost startled to find Sasuke staring at him intently. A little too intently for Naruto to feel comfortable. Snorting, Naruto turned away from the Uchiha and, instead, focused on the man who was studying all of them like they were dissected frogs. Now, let's start the exam, Ibiki said. You are to take a seat at random, making sure to separate yourself from your team. If you don't, we will move you. Do not try to fool us with henjas, genjutsu or anything else you might have in mind. We will notice. Naruto blinked, then toyed with the idea of trying the variation of his no jutsu that Anko had forced him into practicing to replace the henge. Ultimately, though, he didn't want to reveal something like that move and have it fail utterly. Jerking himself out of that line of thought, he hurriedly scrambled for one of the remaining seats, only to find himself sitting next to Sasuke. The dark-haired boy glanced up and, remaining quiet, looked away. Great, Naruto mumbled to himself, wondering darkly what would happen next. Oh, maybe those pictures Anko had taken yesterday could be passed around. Or a written test, that would be just perfect. Here, Sasuke suddenly said. Turning, Naruto saw the paper in the boy's hand and then looked around to similar sheets being handed down the other rows. A written test, Naruto shouted, jumping to his feet to stare at Ibiki. You're joking. Sit down, the large man said, trying and failing to intimidate the boy into sitting. Who's your sensei? A psychotic bee, Naruto retorted darkly, crossing his arms. Ah, Anko. That explains it, Ibiki said in understanding. Then, would you sit down and relax? This isn't a written test, I assure you. Oh, Naruto managed, flopping back into his seat to stare sulkily at the man, a little amazed and worried that the man had known immediately whom he had been talking about. As I said, this is not a written test, Ibiki explained, while they wrote. This test is exactly 3 hours long, and each team will be taking this exam in total isolation from each other. Those sheets of paper are for you to write one personal secret that you do not want an enemy obtaining. Ha, that's the exam, one boy said in surprise. Don't interrupt, Ibiki said, shooting a glare in that direction before continuing. Make sure that you do not allow others to see this secret. But, why do we have to write a secret? Yet another random ninja demanded. First, because I said so, and second, to simulate the danger of failing to maintain a village secret from an enemy. Each of you will be led individually to the room designated for your team. One of you will be replaced randomly with a spy, who, by using a specialized jutsu, will be nearly undetectable. If you allow the spy to get the information through accident or incompetence, you and your entire team fail. What? Abiki grinned coldly. As extra incentive, not only does failure keep you from participating in any future exams, it will also result in each of your secrets being told to everyone who passes this test. You can't do that, a stone nin shouted, jumping to his feet. My rules, Abiki grumbled. If you want to test me, say something else. I'll fail you now. Naruto looked around, unsurprised to see everyone present, save a few, frozen in fear of failure. Shifting in his seat, the blonde turned back to his, so far blank, sheet, wondering what secret he had that he could write. In all honesty, secrets and Naruto did not mix. After a few more minutes of serious thought, during which he considered making one up, he covered the paper with his free hand and began scribbling. Finished, he carefully folded and refolded the paper, in the way that Anko had taught him, then looked around innocently. Now, as your name is called, you will get up, walk out the door and head for the room number given, Abiki said, leveling his gaze on him as the last ninja finished. This is the beginning of the test and, from now on, be careful who you trust. That said, the large man motioned for two men, each holding a clipboard, to step forward and begin calling names. Hino Yasuhiko, Room 1. Tsubaki Toshiro, Room 2. Komiya Eiji, Room 3. Nakamura Takashi, Room 4. Ushima Hiroshi, Room 5. Uzumaki Naruto, Room 6. Hyuga Neji, Room 7. Uchiha Sasuke, Room 8. Utagaibukai Noga, Room 9. Naruto, halfway out of the room already, turned, his gaze immediately locking onto a smirking Noga. Hackles rising, the blonde seriously considered darting back there and beating that boy black and blue, but instead forced himself to keep walking. He hadn't forgotten that boy, or what Noga had said about being the Hokage, and Naruto silently swore to kick the boy's HN, that's your room, Dobe, Sasuke suddenly muttered. Caught up in his anger at Noga, the blonde merely grunted a response and then blindly strode into his room. Then, realizing what Sasuke had called him, Naruto turned to shout a retort at the prodigy when his world suddenly went black and he hit the ground with a dull thump. Meanwhile, Inoiki was humming a happy tune, pleased with the world. His daughter was off attempting to take part in the Chunin exams, which both thrilled and terrified him. He was definitely a proud father. After all, not many rookie genin could boast about taking the exam after only 6 months. Even if she didn't make it, it was still something to brag about, and that was exactly what he had planned. Choza and Shikaku would both be at the local bar, along with most of the other free jonin, placing bets and drinking, waiting to hear who cleared the first stage. Inoiki was almost rubbing his hands together in anticipation. Both had sons who were genin, but neither boy had been allowed to enter the exam. After all the ribbing they had given him for having a girl, he could finally get back at them. Karma was good. Turning his mind away from his two friends, he instead mused on the mysterious Naruto. The name was familiar, but he couldn't place it exactly, which didn't mean much in a village the size of Konoha. Still, the name wasn't common, so he should be able to place a name to the face, especially if the kid came from a family of ninja. Shrugging it off, he sighed, his protective side swearing that he would meet the boy first chance he got. His fatherly duty demanded that he confront this unknown teenage boy and lay the law down. His wife demanded that he leave it alone. In the end, he could wait until after the Chunin exams, but he and this, Naruto, would definitely be having a discussion soon. Hearing the ruckus up ahead, thoughts about his daughter and Naruto were driven out of his mind. He could hear the heavy betting going on. Rubbing his hands gleefully, he sped up, slipping into the bar to join in the betting pool. There was a decent-sized group, some of whom were still in Anbu gear and military police uniforms, crowded before a large bar where an even larger board was hanging and a man was taking bets. Anyone else? The barman shouted. Last call, the exam starts in 10 minutes. I put 50 yo on Sasuke-kun's team passing. 50 on team 7, the barman echoed back, turning to right. 5 to 20 odds, anyone else? 75 yo on Naruto-san's team passing. one of the Anbu shouted, echoed by his buddies. 75 on Team 9. The barman said. 5 to 20 odds, anyone else? Inoiki blinked, impressed that his daughter's team actually had the same odds of passing as a genius like Uchiha Sasuke. It was also slightly unnerving to know that his daughter was apparently that dangerous, which was not a good thing for any parent. Still, he had better show his support. 100 yo on my daughter Ino's team. 100 on Team 9. The barman echoed back. Satisfied, Inoiki turned and, nodding at a few acquaintances, sidled up to the bar where drinks were being served, finding both friends laughing about something. Ordering with smug satisfaction, he took sake and cup and moved down to join his friends who turned at his approach. Hey, Inoiki, Chooser said happily, fishing in his nearby bowl of bar snacks. We were just talking about your daughter's team. Oh, Inoiki said, pouring his sake carefully before glancing at the other two. I am rather proud of her. Only 6 months as a genin and she's already good enough for the exams. Quote. Actually, I don't think that's the reason why she's involved. Shikaku said, gulping his own sake. Her sensei isn't known for patience. Hey, it's-san. Inoiki blinked, staring at the two men. I know he's sick, but I met him. He's a perfectly good sensei. Yeah, Chooser said, his lips twitching as he fought back his laughter. Mitarashi Anko isn't, though. That's your daughter's new sensei. What? Inoiki shouted, his fingers slackening enough to allow his cup to fall with a loud crack. Staring at the two in surprise, he turned quickly, eyes straining to see the sensei name beside the team numbers. Kami, that's not. No. Oh. Heaven help Ino. You think that's bad? Shikaku said with some amusement. Look at her teammates. Ha, Inoiki said, glancing at his friend before looking back at the board. Aberrane Shino and Uzumaki Naruto. He frowned, thinking that name was now very familiar for some reason. He turned to say something to his old teammates when he snapped back around, eyes widening in surprise and horror. Why to goddamn minute? Uzumaki Naruto. That. The kid in the hospital. He continued in this vein for several minutes, eventually progressing to frothing at the mouth, followed shortly by fainting. I was sure he'd go straight to heart attack, Shikaku said, passing Chooser 30 yo. The big sissy. Coming back to the waking world, Ino grimaced, noting the cool floor against her skin. Shivering, she eased herself onto her back, wincing as she stared up at the pure white ceiling. Sitting up, she frowned, noting that the entire room was the same pure white. Reaching up to hold the side of her head, she winced, wondering what exactly was going on. Nobody had mentioned being knocked out. Oi, you're awake. Jerking, which was a bad idea, Ino looked up from the spot in front of her to her teammate's face. For a moment, he didn't look real, like some damn cartoon. This, however, was because of his bright clothes standing out against the white walls. She was pretty sure even she would look like a cartoon in this situation. Ino, I'm fine, Ino said, holding a hand up while motioning for him to lower his volume. Kami, what happened? Last thing I remember was seeing you on the ground when I came in. I saw much the same thing, Shino suddenly injected, drawing Ino's attention. I think it is part of the exam, a way to ensure that one of us could be replaced properly. Ino nodded and then leaned back against a nearby wall, a bit awed that even Shino looked like a cartoon in this room, while mentally trying to work out what to do now. Shino's explanation had reminded her that at least one of these boys was not who he seemed. Naruto, however, seemed more intent on pacing and ranting under his breath, as if completely unaware that he should be trying to find the spy. Now, Yamanaka Ino was by no stretch of the imagination a genius, even if she was talented with a sword, but she already knew how to figure this situation out. After all, her family had already created the perfect jutsu for this situation, the Shintenshin no Jutsu. It was the only logical choice in discovering the spy, even if there were risks to using it. First, if it failed, which was likely, she could potentially alert her target. Second, if she was wrong and the spy noticed her trick, he would be on alert or attack her real body. Still, it was the only option they had, and Ino had to decide on which boy to use it. That was not going to be an easy task either, neither one seemed out of character. It was a tough choice, one she wasn't sure she could make, in all honesty. Still, it had to be done, and that meant, since she lacked real clues, she would have to use it on Naruto. Mainly because her father had always told her to never try the Shintention on an Aburame. Which wasn't surprising since even Ino now knew that Aburame and their bugs were connected by some sort of constant psychic bond. It would safer to try it on Naruto and, if she was wrong about the blonde, she would have the strongest member of the team under her control to protect her real body. That settled, she gathered her resolve and nerves, then surreptitiously moved her hands into position and clenched her eyes, silently mouthing the words to the jutsu. Then, just like that, she was free of her body, weightless, free, and moving toward the unsuspecting Naruto. It felt like hours, though it was only minutes, but finally she was there and, without preamble, she attempted to slip into his mind. A second later, her head snapped back from being reflected faster than her mind had been able to blink. That was when she felt a touch of panic. Ino had been in several minds. In all of that time, all of those minds, she had learned of three things they had in common. The mind was a type of maze, that it could not be read like a book, and that even if she couldn't maintain control, she could enter for a moment. Uzumaki Naruto's mind, however, in that split second of contact, was like nothing she had ever experienced. It was hidden, locked away completely. The only way to describe it, in terms she could understand, was a black wall. A sheer wall of darkness. Blinking away the stars of pain that danced in front her eyes, she checked on the blonde and found him agitatedly shifting around. Glancing at Shino, she was surprised to see him looking at her in what was his version of a questioning look. Ino frowned and turned her attention back to Naruto, and, forming the seals, tried once more. It seemed to take even longer this time, and when she finally did reach the blonde, she braced herself. It happened even faster and this time, her head snapped back hard enough to thump against the wall behind her. Reaching up to hold her head, she stared at the now concerned-looking boy with awe, and, possibly, terror. How could anyone have built such a wall in their mind? Did he build it on purpose? Why? How? Ino. Hey Ino, you okay? Naruto asked in concern, moving over to crouch next to her. Huh, yeah, Ino managed, forcing her hands to stop shaking. It's just starting to get to me, I guess. Oi, it's not that big a deal. Naruto said, touching her shoulder in a reassuring manner. Yeah, Ino agreed reflexively, while mentally she was rambling about what she had encountered. As far as she knew, nobody had ever been able to completely block access to their minds from a Yamanaka. Tuning his reassuring, as well as loud, words out, Ino reached up to rub her temples. Not that big a deal, Ino muttered, looking at the blonde who was now rambling on about ramen. Still, at least Ino felt fairly certain that Naruto was not the spy. After all, nobody could act that enraptured with noodles. Shino watched Naruto closely, wondering at the boy and his apparently ever-shifting moods. Shaking it off, he turned his mind to the matter at hand, finding the spy. Or, more correctly, he mused, how to alert Naruto to the fact that Ino had to be the spy. After all, Shino had yet to encounter another person that could provoke his bugs into biting. Plus, he had never known Ino to be that quiet and still, not even yesterday. She had to be a spy, and a bad one at that. Yet, he wondered about that. The problem the situation presented was interesting. To discover the spy would be easy enough if you knew your team halfway decently. It was alerting your true teammate that was difficult. Plus, as Naruto was proving, these rooms were designed to increase discomfort. Even Shino could feel his unease increasing with each passing moment locked within this room. If it wasn't for his family constantly reassuring him that the walls were not moving closer together, he might have actually been panicking. It was as if this entire room was designed to create panic and increase an already stressful situation. Okay, I can't take this much longer. Ino suddenly said, getting to her feet and glaring at Shino. Unless we discover for sure who the spy is, we will have to, Shino explained, standing as well, unwilling to allow a spy to hold any leverage over him. Well, that's easy, Ino snapped, glaring at him. All we have to do is look at the clues. 1. Who in this room is acting out of character? 2. Who in this room would be easiest to replace? 3. All of those could describe any of us, Shino explained calmly. The only person in this room that I know for sure is who they appear to be is Naruto, which leaves you as the spy. No way, Ino said angrily, rounding on him. You're the spy. You haven't talked to a bug yet, and the real Shino is always talking to a bug. Unless I am doing so without being obvious, Shino responded coolly. Perhaps in an attempt to lure a spy into the open. I'm not the spy, Ino shouted, advancing toward him slightly. And I say I am not the spy, Shino said with a casual shrug. If we both agree that Naruto is not the spy, then we must agree that one of us is. We will have to prove who we are. Wait, how do you guys know? Naruto started to ask before Shino see him off. My family reacts to you in a way that can't be faked, Shino explained calmly. Plus, you're the only person that could sound in love with ramen, Ino added dryly, glaring at Shino. And you have this weird habit of nodding to yourself when you think, and you tend to keep your eyes closed. Those are things that only a Yamanaka or an Uchiha could notice, and neither would be in this room right now. Shino paused, then arched an eyebrow. Now that sounded like Ino, which made him wonder if they hadn't been going about this all wrong. Perhaps we are overthinking this problem. What does that mean? Ino said, fixing him with her stare. It could be that there is no spy among us. You would say that. You are the most likely to be the spy after all, Ino retorted fiercely. I think what we should concentrate on is proving if there is a spy among us or not who that spy is. And, how do we manage that? That I am not sure of, Shino said after pausing for a moment. The theory was good, but difficult to prove. I know how to solve this problem, Naruto said with a grin, looking between the two. Oh, I gotta hear this, Ino said with a huff, crossing her arms. I, too, am curious about your solution, Shino said calmly, wondering in silence about how, exactly, such an atypical person would go about solving such a complicated problem. Especially when such a person had a tendency just to hit first and worry about details later. Oi, it's easy, Naruto said, nodding as he rubbed his chin. We just gotta prove if there's a spy here or not, right? Yes, Shino said, lowering his head slightly. Yeah, Ino agreed darkly, shooting Shino a distrusting glare. Then it's easy, the orange-clad boy said, his tone growing intent. The only way to prove it is for one of us to reveal a secret to the others. If there is a spy, then we fail, if not, we pass. That is a tad too simplistic, Naruto, Shino explained slowly. None of us can be sure if we are who we say we are. Gambling our advancement is not wise. If this were a village secret, would you be so willing to share it? Oi. Trust me, Naruto said confidently. But, Ino started to object before Naruto see her off, his tone determined. My secret is, I like pork ramen more than miso ramen. Shino blinked, unable to believe that the boy had just taken such a large leap of faith. From the look of surprise on Ino's face, she couldn't believe it either. The moment lasted another minute, and then the door opened and a ninja wearing a green flak vest beckoned them to follow. Shino silently led the way, aware that Naruto seemed a bit too smug about something. It wasn't as if he didn't have faith in his family, but these were highly trained ninja that were testing them. The possibility that they could trick them was very real. He wasn't the only one to think that, either, if Ino's whispered beratings of Naruto were anything to judge by. What have you done? Are you a complete idiot? Now we'll never be Chunin. Oi, give it a rest. Ino, I am sure that Naruto has done only what he believed he had to, Shino said, not looking behind him. He would just have to trust his family and his teammate. Whatever, the girl muttered. He's still an idiot. That merely set Naruto off, and Shino couldn't help but sigh, noting that even the escort sighed with him. Apparently, he wasn't the only one who found the two blondes arguing annoying, which wasn't surprising. Both had rather explosive tempers and naturally loud voices. It was something Shino had adjusted to slightly over the last 3 days, but it was still a bit much. Thankfully, they were forced to stop as their Chunin escort opened the door and ushered them all back into the main room. Gathered in groups were a handful of teams, the bulk of which appeared to be Kusa, Iwa with a scattering of Konoha ninja. You three, don't just stand there gawking, Ibiki suddenly snapped, eyes narrowed. Sit your down and be quiet. Oi, why don't you just KMMMPH? Naruto started to say before Ino clamped a hand over his mouth and apologized while dragging the blonde behind Shino. Shino, on the other hand, was curious about the timing of Ibiki's response and even more so about the whole situation. If they had failed, then they should have been told and sent on their way, but this didn't exactly feel as if they had failed. As if to prove this point, the grizzled man up front crossed his arms and started talking. This exam started with exactly 144 participants. That was a total of 48 teams, each with 3 members. Each team has spent, at the minimum, 336 hours together, risking their lives for each other. Ibiki paused, glancing from team to team before continuing. Of these 48 teams, we now have only 30 that are qualified to continue with this exam. Wait, we passed? Sakura asked in amazement, and there was a general muttering of agreement. Of course you passed, Ibiki said with a small chuckle, and Shino was reminded of both Anko and Naruto with their ever-shifting personalities. Each of you proved your ability and, whether knowingly or unknowingly, solved the problem of the spy. Ha! A girl sporting 4 ponytails managed, blinking rapidly. This test was designed to test your ability to work under pressure, the stress and paranoia of not knowing who to trust. Your ability to gather information from people who could misinterpret that as hostile and attack, Ibiki explained with a sweeping gesture. But, we didn't have a spy, Kiba said in exasperation. Shino, who had been lost in thought, quickly snapped back to attention, noting the agreeing sounds filling the room. So there hadn't been a single spy on any of these teams. Well, that was to be expected, but only on the surface. Statistically, there should have been a handful of teams that had a spy. Of course not, Ibiki said in amusement. None of the teams ever had a spy. It was all a trick because, as Chunins, you'll be given with important information. You need to have an ability to check on those you have doubts about without letting on. Those teams that failed, the ones that turned on each other, they weren't worthy of the Chunin rank. Reaching up, Ibiki removed his bandana, revealing the most horrific vision possible. Scars, burns, scabbed over holes. As Chunin, you will be faced with that and 100 other serious decisions. You'll have to know your team as well as you know yourself, if not better. Because, in war, secrets and information are worth not just your team's life, but the lives of thousands of your fellow shinobi. Shino frowned, then nodded in understanding, as did several others. So, he had been right, there had never been a spy. It also hammered home his feelings and the knowledge that he would have to make it a point to trust his family and teammates even more. A single moment of doubt could prove disastrous, even Naruto seemed to share that understanding. So, we really passed? Ino said hesitantly in amazement. Yes, yes, Ino shouted, glomping Naruto before jumping to her feet and pointing at Sakura. Take that, you big four-headed bimbo. Sasuke-kun will be mine. What was that, piggy? Sakura shouted back, jumping to her feet as well. Suddenly, the second test is looking a tad more interesting, a new voice said, interrupting the arguments, and everyone turned to stare at the masked, one-eyed, silver-haired man now standing next to Ibiki, reading a red book. Oi, it's the masked pervert, Naruto suddenly said, thrusting his finger at the man. Masked pervert, Ino echoed, blinking, while Shino arched an eyebrow. He was finally beginning to notice a trend in how Naruto referred to some people. Yeah, he reads really naughty books in public, Naruto exclaimed, despite the fact that almost everybody was now staring at him except for the man who was busy reading and giggling. It's kinda weird, though, he's really strong and everything. Oh Naruto, you passed. Kakashi said, see him off. I suppose Anko won't have to castrate you after all, That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.